Hello, I'm Ken Cook, president and founder of EWG and moderator of this virtual rally to save California solar. Save it from what, you ask? Well, from California. The state government itself, in the form of the unelected bureaucrats at the California Public Utility Commission. They're supporting an effort by the state's multi-billion-dollar privately owned monopoly utilities to snuff out the utilities' only competition, the millions of Californians who generate their own energy or who want to generate it with solar panels on the rooftops of homes, churches, schools, assisted living facilities, small businesses, and parking lots all across our state. My job today is to get out of the way so you can hear from a panel of 5 remarkable experts and advocates who have played key roles shaping and growing the most successful and wildly popular distributed energy economy in the country. Over 1.5 million rooftop solar systems installed to date and growing by leaps and bounds every month. Well, now our panelists are defending rooftop solar from energy bureaucrats and utility bosses. Today, they're going to explain what is so wrong about the rooftop solar policy changes the California Public Utility Commission has proposed and may vote on as soon as next month. Why we cannot let this proposal become policy and what you can do about it. We'll focus on 4 key points about this proposal. Point 1, the solar tax. The good news, the state's original plan to charge rooftop solar owners an outrageous monthly fee, a solar tax, has been dropped. The bad news, California's powerful utilities have already engineered an effort at the Utility Commission to restore the tax. Point 2, any policy must fully honor the deal over 1 million rooftop solar owners made when they invested in their systems and keep the same fair benefits they were promised at the start. Point 3, state bureaucrats and utilities propose a steep and abrupt drop, some 75 to 80%, in the compensation rooftop owners now earn when they sell their unused clean electricity back to the grid. You're going to hear what doing that will do to rooftop solar in our state and why big utilities are so excited about it. And point 4, state bureaucrats and utility bosses have justified their fight against rooftop solar by claiming that current policy hurts working class Californians. That premise has been proven wrong again and again. But here's the question. If helping working class Californians is the goal of this proposal, why does it make it harder and maybe impossible for Californians, average Californians, to access the clean, reliable, affordable energy that rooftop solar systems provide today? So now to our panel. Not in the order they'll speak, but I want to introduce them. Jeremy Lin is senior attorney with the Center for Biological Diversity. He's been aggressively and effectively defending rooftop solar before the Public Utility Commission. Laura Dehan is state director for Environment California. If there's a public interest advocate who's done more to build support for rooftop solar in our state, I would like to meet her. Laura Nish is executive director of 350 Bay Area. She's a leading player in the fight to ensure California leads global efforts to combat climate change, and rooftop solar is central to that. Pastor Curtis Robinson, Sr., is senior pastor of Faith Baptist Church in Oakland. He's going to preach to us from experience and conviction about the importance of making rooftop solar accessible to all Californians. And Esperanza Vielma is the executive director of the Environmental Justice Coalition for Water in California. ESPY has been instrumental in the fight to save California solar, making it a focal point for environmental justice organizations across the state. Now, just to be clear, we could have had 600 panelists today. That's how many environmental justice, affordable housing, environmental groups, how many churches and businesses have banded together in the coalition to save rooftop solar in California. But today, you have 5 of the best. So we're going to start with my friend Laura Dehan. What a champ. Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ken. It's such a pleasure to be here today with these wonderful advocates and allies to stand up once again for the future here in California for rooftop solar. So I'm Laura Dean, State Director for Environment California. We're a statewide environmental advocacy organization powered by grassroots support all across the state of California. And we work for clean air, clean water, protecting our beautiful open spaces across the state, fighting for clean energy and a livable planet for the future. And that's really why I'm here today. I want to talk about the role that rooftop solar can play in protecting California's climate and land. First, it's really important to underscore that we need more rooftop solar for our future. California is one of the sunniest places in the entire world. We have enormous solar potential in our state. And our lawmakers have acknowledged that, our leaders have acknowledged that. As we have made plans, as the state of California's agencies have made plans for how we're going to get to our goals of 100% clean energy in the future, rooftop solar is a key part of that puzzle. In every single iteration that I've seen, the plan counts on rooftop solar to grow far beyond where it stands right now with 1.5 million solar roofs, which is awesome. We need way more than that, right? We need to go from what's about 10.5 gigawatts all the way up to at least 40 gigawatts of rooftop solar. And a lot of estimates are saying we need even more. Frankly, I think we should do even more than that. You can see by this chart that we have the potential to get almost 130 gigawatts of power from rooftop solar alone. This graph is from our coalition, and it just shows how we need rooftop solar not only to keep growing at the current pace, but we actually need adoption of rooftop solar to speed up right now, so that we can meet our clean energy goals. And the rate, so these bar charts are how much it's growing every year. And in California, Governor Newsom led the charge in accelerating California's clean energy goals, putting us on track for a new requirement of 90% clean energy by 2035. This legislative session. And that's going to require even faster deployment of clean energy. And rooftop solar is the best at that. It takes too long to get renewable energy built right now, and rooftop solar is the fastest way to build to get more clean energy on the grid. So it can help us displace, no longer need the dirty energy like gas and coal to power our life. There's a lot of other really important environmental benefits that come along with rooftop solar. For one, it helps to minimize damage to environmental spaces. And we did a deep dive on this and looked at what is going to be the requirement for more open space if we don't take advantage of the existing rooftops that we're planning to catch the sun, from in the next 20 to 30 years. And we found that we would need a space about half the size of LA if we don't take advantage of those existing rooftops. So we've been missing out on a lot of beautiful special open space and wildlife habitat if we just got rid of rooftop solar as a technology that we use. Rooftop solar is amazing for reducing water usage, which is really important in a drought-ridden state like California. You don't need you need very little water in any rooftop solar management, unlike a lot of other energy sources. And then the other thing that's really important, especially right now, as we look to how California is going to face the climate crisis and the intense heat waves like we saw earlier this year, is that we really need more rooftop solar to boost our state's resilience. If we can have solar panels on the roofs of homes and businesses, schools and farms, and warehouses and superstores, that is going to allow us to have a stronger, more resilient grid overall, so that our communities are more resilient to power outages, especially when they're paired with storage. But we need to get to that future. And Unfortunately, the new proposal that just came out last week by the state's Public Utilities Commission is not the policy to get us to that future. The new proposal slashes the credit that solar customers would get overnight by 75% for new solar customers. And that is not going to help us reach our climate and clean energy goals. Let me show you why. We did a report, Environment California Research and Policy Center did a report looking at what actually happens in the jurisdictions where something like this takes place, where the solar incentives are slashed overnight. And the key findings from our report, Rooftop Solar at Risk, is that, first of all, incentives matter. Second of all, getting rid of, rolling back solar compensation, the credit customers get, can cause solar installations to fall dramatically. And thirdly, the really important takeaway is that decision happening right now at the State Public Utilities Commission on net metering has major implications for California's ability to meet our clean energy and climate goals. It's important to note that the reason we are where we are today with 1.5 million solar roofs is because of a foundation of strong policies to incentivize the growth of rooftop solar. California has more solar than any other state by far. We have nearly half of the solar roofs in the country just in our state. And that's because of the incredible incentives that we've continued to prioritize, that policymakers have put in place, that the public supports. You can see here, now this is a bit of a complicated chart, but let me just explain. It shows where the three major utility companies, the big investor-owned utilities, so PG&E, Southern California Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric, it shows the path of how rooftop solar has grown over time from 2014 to last year. And you can see that it's been a pretty upward trajectory, steady growth. There was one drop point, which was in the 2016-2017 period when these incentives were up for debate again. There was a lot of fear about what would happen. This is actually in contrast to other states, other jurisdictions where we've seen sudden drop-off in solar at different points of at least a 40% decline. We've been able to avoid that because we've had consistent, strong policies. Nevada, it does not have that story. So unfortunately, Nevada moved forward and cut their credit for rooftop solar customers, their net metering credit, by 75% in 2016. So that's the same credit cut that is being proposed to happen overnight here in California in the new proposal. And then, in fact, the California proposal would get even worse over a 5-year period, dropping down to an 80% cut overall. What we saw in Nevada, and you can kind of see this in this chart, is that solar adoption was growing all the way up until 2016 when the cut happened, 75% cut to the credit, and overnight, solar adoption plummeted. People stopped wanting to go solar because the incentive wasn't there. They couldn't make the risk to make that investment. When there was massive political fallout, many companies went out of business. Solar adoption dropped by 47% overnight, pretty much. And then the legislators felt they had to act and they restored that credit. And then we saw rooftop solar adoption return. In Hawaii, they ended net metering in 2015. And you can see that right after that, there was a really big drop in solar adoption, and it is still not returned. And then here in California, we can see examples of what happened in key districts in the local municipal utility districts in Turlock, Imperial, and Modesto, where they actually eliminated their net metering credit program, and subsequently rooftop solar adoption completely dried up. That is what we need to stop. That's what we cannot afford to have happen here in California, all across the state. And why is this happening? We know that blocking rooftop solar is actually a concerted effort by powerful special interest groups, the companies, lobbyists, and front groups that are really pushing an agenda that's anti-rooftop solar. We've seen the same playbook play out all across the country, and it's happening right now in California. And so that's why we are calling on you to act today. You can go to our website, environmentcalifornia.org/rooftop solar, and we've got 4 actions you can take right now to make sure that our governor and our state public utility commission leaders really make sure we save solar before it's too late. So back over to you, Ken.
Laura, thanks so much. Yeah, if it ain't broke, and boy, this is the opposite of broke, the system we have now, why not break it? Seems to be the policy here. That's going in the wrong direction. Let's go deeper. Let's hear next from Laura Niche, who's going to tell us from her perspective just how bad this proposal is. Laura, I think you're muted.
I am muted.
There you are.
And it's really good to be in company with these amazing activists. 350 Bay Area has a team working on CPUC rulemakings like these. It fits with our work at the state and regional level to speed the transition from dangerous fossil fuels to a clean energy economy, focusing on equitable solutions. We really believe that the linchpin of energy justice is affordable, reliable energy. And the faster we make this transition, the faster we reduce health and climate harming emissions. Studies based both on past experience and detailed projections show that the fastest path to affordable energy and cleaner air is by continued robust growth in rooftop solar and other local solar and storage systems. You can see here that Vibrant Clean Energy's model shows us that the least cost grid includes a rapid growth of local solar and storage, which will save Californians billions in total systems costs. Here's CAISO's 2017-2018 transmission plan, which notes that canceled and modified projects will save Californians $2.6 billion in future transmission costs because of savings driven by rooftop solar energy generation and energy efficiency. So rooftop solar benefits everyone by keeping system costs down, everyone but the investor-owned utilities. In the CPUC's recent proposed decision for new net energy metering rules, the authors state that their overriding goals are to increase equity and keep rooftop solar growing. But we know from experience that slashing the compensation rates for excess energy going back to the grid will result in crippling cuts to solar adoption. And the CPUC's proposed rules do not provide a safety valve to address this market collapse until 3 to 5 years out. So this proposal is really all but certain to fail on meeting the solar growth goal. What about the equity goal? We see throughout this proposal the fingerprints of the utility industry's cynical nationwide campaign to artificially pit rooftop solar against equity, claiming that rooftop solar owners shift system costs onto low-income ratepayers. This cost shift argument has been pitched by multiple investor-owned utilities across the nation. When a system ties profit to big capital investments, of course, the industry is going to fight like crazy to shut down competing approaches. But again, the preponderance of evidence shows that continued robust growth in these small solar systems will result in lower costs for all ratepayers and a more resilient grid. Long-term affordability comes from avoided investments in infrastructure. Generally, for California's utilities, robust distributed local solar systems will require less investment in new big transmission lines and lower maintenance costs for those lines, and therefore less profit for the utilities. It's not just transmission savings, but every megawatt has to be installed somewhere. Siting for big solar is an expensive and time-consuming process with real potential environmental consequences. We should start by providing clean, reliable power in our communities, driving local investment, reliability, and jobs, and then look to utility scale solar and big transmission projects to fill the gaps. There are some other grid benefits as well that result in a more resilient grid for everyone, including power quality improvements and reduced demand during peak times. Benefits for all, not just for those with solar on their roofs. About half of all rooftop systems are now on low and middle income roofs. This is a really important development. Just as there is growing momentum and support for increasing rooftop and storage adoption in these households, this proposal will put those systems out of reach for the very populations the proposal claims to want to protect. This proposal looks to fail on the stated equity goal, largely because the proposed rules are based on flawed assumptions. The proposed compensation rate for excess rooftop solar is based on a formal avoided cost calculator. 350 Bay Area analysts join many other concerned community groups in criticizing this model for overstating rooftop solar costs while ignoring important benefits like community resilience, land conservation, decreased transmission costs, improved air quality, and decreased damage from climate change. Flawed assumptions lead to flawed findings and flawed policies. The ideal grid of the future is affordable and resilient. It depends on both continued robust growth in small solar and storage systems and utility scale solar. But we also must keep pushing for other policy solutions to energy poverty and support for low and middle income solar and storage installations. Back to you, Ken.
Laura, thank you so much. I mean, we could spend an hour with each one of these experts, as you can probably tell. And I just, that what comes through from your remarks is just, who are the real losers if rooftop solar expands and grows and powers communities across the socioeconomic spectrum? Who loses? The utilities. So no wonder they're fighting so hard across the country, not just here in California. We're turning next to Esperanza Vielma, who has been such an incredibly strong leader. She's rallied the environmental justice community around this issue, and we're thrilled to have you join us on this panel. Espy, take it away.
Good afternoon. Again, thank you very much. And I'm representing here this afternoon the Environmental Justice Coalition for Water. And I'm also representing as a co-founder of the Coalition of Environmental Equity and Economics. Both coalitions are statewide coalitions, and we focus on environmental justice communities statewide, urban, rural, and incorporated. And we have quite a few questions as far as this proposed decision. We've been fighting to try to make sure that our environmental justice communities are at the table. And it looks like we weren't invited to enter into this process at this point, because one of the questions is, how is this decision an equitable decision? How is it that it's making rooftop solar affordable for our environmental justice community members, along with our environmental justice community organizations, agencies like our schools and our churches? There has to be more to decommission the peaker plants in our environmental justice communities. That's one of the other issues that we're facing. So creating affordable access, a plan to decommission the peaker plants, and to create more incentive programs for our environmental justice community members. If you look at the market of increase in solar, it's been in our working class communities. So why not put more money there, and why not put more incentives in those areas? It just makes sense in terms of if you're looking at the market and looking at the bottom line. So those are the questions that we have as far as folks should be asking, where is it that these environmental justice communities are going to be? If they're not included now, they're not going to be included later. The slash for incentives is not going to help the schools, especially those schools that are in the AB 617 communities. So, for example, us here in Stockton, where we're located, all of the hotspots and the severely disadvantaged communities in the AB 617 region, there's schools in there, there's churches, and what is going to be the incentive for them to have solar and to be able to meet the climate goals of California set forth by our governor's office. So in this proposed decision, how is California going to meet those climate goals? How are they going to incorporate the Justice 40 by Biden's administration into California without having equitable access to rooftop solar? There's a study that was done. It's not recent, but it's relevant. And that's in terms of the Physicians, Scientists, and Engineers for Healthy Energy, PSC. And it was done on the storage and peaker plant replacement project, and it was in 2020. And so that basically goes to show that if you were to replace the 65 peaker plants that are in an environmental justice communities, we could then, create a more healthy environment and then also try to attain the goals that are set forth by California in terms of our climate goals. So again, we want to ask the CPUC and the governor's office, where and how is equity the center of the decision-making process? If at this point, we are not included, our environmental justice communities are not included, there aren't any kind, the percentages are slashed, are great in terms of anyone getting solar after everything is put into place. There should be a health study that the commissioner should look at and ask for in terms of their solar decision-making process. So we're asking you to take action, to call, to write to the CPUC, to the governor's office. We have through our website as well, See Truth, C-triple-E, truth.org, and also be present. Make a public comment with the CPUC commissioners and let them know. Most of the time, these meetings take place during the daytime when many community members that are working class are not able or they're not present at these meetings. So I think it's up to us to be able to speak and to be present and to ask those questions as to where is it that we're going to be an equitable California? Where is it that we're going to be able to reach our climate goals if our environmental justice communities and concerns and health are not included in the plan? So I think that we need to ask these questions as we move forward, and that we need to take action and make sure that the public utilities commissioners who represent all of California, especially those most vulnerable communities, and let them know that they need to be included in the equation and that they need to have the incentive programs to move forward the agenda of California climate goals along with our environmental justice communities. Thank you.
Espy, thank you for constantly centering the fact that this proposal, the premise of which is to help the very communities that you're talking about, does not help those communities, does not do for them what we need to be doing. So they've got it completely backwards if they wanted to provide that assistance. So thank you for that, that incredible testimony. Next, we'll hear from Roger Lynn from the Center for Biological Diversity. Roger?
Thank you, Ken, and thanks also to the other panelists today as well. I'm an attorney in the Center's Energy Justice Program, where we work on fighting utility corruption and hitting back against industry attacks on solar and other clean energies. We advocate for a clean and just energy future that protects wildlife and empowers communities that have borne the brunt of dirty pollution and a centralized monopoly on power. And building on the prior presentations, I also want to focus on the equity debate in this NEM proceeding, specifically the cost shift argument. In September of this year, right before the new proposed decision proposal was released, 129 California and national organizations sent a letter to Governor Newsom The letter said that the cost shift argument weaponizes equity to limit or even eliminate the NEM program, a tactic that is being used by utilities in other parts of the country to attack rooftop solar. This cost shift argument dangerously ignores and perpetuates the disproportionate impacts of pollution and energy violence in environmental justice, or EJ, communities. Backing up for a second, though, I do want to identify 3 problems with the Public Utilities Commission's net metering analysis. First, the root cause of our high electricity bills. It's not the NEM program. We have high electricity bills in this state because of the wildfire mitigation costs and massive costs for transmission, which the NEM program displaces. In addition to that, the California investor-owned utilities have a greater than 10% return on equity, which means that for every piece of infrastructure they build, they get 10% of how much it costs back as profits. That is the highest return of equity in the country. There's also a Public Utilities Commission proceeding right now that is considering moving the wildfire costs so that shareholders, utility shareholders, pay for those costs. If that happens, this cost shift debate would not be so divisive at all, which I think highlights the root cause that our high electricity bills are not because of the NEM program. Second, in doing their analysis, the Public Utilities Commission did not examine individual energy bills. Instead, and this is the third point, they used modeling tools, the avoided cost calculator that Laura mentioned, that ignore significant benefits to environmental justice communities that the NEM program delivers. And I want to focus on this one because the new proposed decision decreases the export credit based on this modeling tool, the avoided cost calculator. So the following are I'm going to run through a number of values and benefits, just expanding on the prior presentations that are not considered and they're not part of the value, which is why the export credit has been decreased. The first is the significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from not having to operate or build fossil fuel infrastructure that the NEM program displaces. Huge value in that, but missing from the analysis. Closely related, the co-pollution or public health benefits of fewer fossil fuel power plants in environmental justice communities, not included in the analysis. Goal 2 of the PUC's Environmental and Social Justice Action Plan actually requires the Commission to consider local air quality and public health, but those values and benefits are not in the equation for this NEM debate. We've talked a little bit about transmission costs, the $2.6 billion in savings that rooftop solar and energy efficiency avoided in transmission projects. But the PUC's analysis also estimated avoided transmission costs to be $4+ billion over 5 years. The reality, though, is that the avoided transmission costs from rooftop solar amounts to $4+ billion per year, not over 5 years. So that is completely underestimated. And we also have to include the costs of wildfire mitigation as well that we avoid. If we don't have to build transmission, we don't have to spend massive amounts of money undergrounding those transmission lines, and also the costs of associated power shutoffs. Reliability and resiliency, very important here because of the public health and safety benefits of stopping power shutoffs, especially environmental justice communities, but those values and benefits are also not considered. Laura talked a little bit about land use, but also wanted to highlight that the avoided cost calculator, the modeling tools, do not include land use harms from fossil fuel plants and badly sited utility scale solar and wind projects. This includes significant impacts to biodiversity. The image here is of the desert tortoise habitat that was destroyed by this giant solar farm. And we also eliminate natural carbon sinks as well in the middle of our climate emergency. And we do not need to go to manufactured carbon capture and sequestration, unproven technologies, when we have these natural carbon sinks that we have to preserve. And there's also the infeasibility of relying on utility scale only. We may not have the 1 million acres available, and also the build out rate of utility scale solar has only been at 2.8 gigawatts per year, 1 gigawatt per year. We need 2.8 per year to meet our climate goals. Utility scale solar is not going to get us there alone. We definitely need rooftop solar as well. Local economic and job benefits that the net metering program creates, including local clean energy installation jobs. Those are more numerous than utility scale clean energy jobs and fossil fuel jobs as well, and also provide local benefits. But those local economic benefits are also missing from the Public Utilities Commission's analysis. So a summary of the values and benefits omitted: avoided GHGs and climate impacts, the co-pollutants, and public health benefits as well, affordability, local reliability, resiliency, especially in EJ communities, and avoided land use impacts, and also the local economic benefits. And I did want to end by just saying that the analysis that we have from the Public Utilities Commission focuses on the past. It relies on data from the past, but we have to focus on the grid of today and tomorrow. Unlike the grid of the past, we no longer have a hermetically sealed system that requires a set amount of utility assets to serve all customers and a need to divide up its cost. The grid is a vital lever in addressing the climate emergency, and the question is, can we do that from the ground up by finding the hardest to reach communities and serving them first with clean energy solutions to meet our climate goals? To do that, though, we need a strong and not a weakened NEM program. And I appreciate the time to present, and there are a number of links on this slide that I've included. So for folks in the public, I'm easy to find on our website. Please let me know if you would like a copy of these slides with this information.
Roger, thank you so much. And thank you for waging the fight you're waging at the Public Utility Commission. Much appreciated. And you're right. We, as the other speakers have said, we really should be building up from the bottom when it comes to energy with the distributed options we have before us today, and not the opposite. So thank you for your advocacy and your expertise. Next, we'll turn to Pastor Robinson. Welcome to this rally. So grateful to have you here, and so grateful for your deep commitment to this cause of saving California solar.
Well, thank you very much, Ken. We appreciate being here. You're doing a wonderful job. So when I say that Faith Baptist Church is Oakland's first resiliency hub, the first question that many people ask is, what is a resiliency hub? In an article from the Christian Science Monitor entitled Resilience Hubs, a New Approach to Crisis Response, the article, Ken, goes on to say, things that shock a community have to do with climate, but more urgently, they have to do with systemic inequities. He said, pointing to police shootings, civic unrest, the growth of homeless encampments, and more. The approach uses a respected local organization such as a church or community center and bolsters it to help prepare neighborhoods for crisis, such as hurricanes, heat waves, pandemics, or unrest, as well as to respond and recover from them. So when Faith was approached with the idea of rooftop solar, it was relatively a no-brainer. As a house of worship, there is a collective emphasis on the workings of God in the universe. The first job that God gave humanity was to tend the garden. When it comes to environmental justice, our goal is to take care of this place called Mother Earth. The world is now in an environmental tailspin. However, with technology that teaches us how to create sustainable outcomes, sprinkled with common sense, we can achieve an environmental balance that can create safe spaces environmentally for our children and for our future. Faith was the recipient of the U.S. Green Building Council's Green Legacy Award. And I will say this, it was a surprise to me that we won this award, because what we were looking to do was just to help our community. So we're very surprised, and we're very happy that the U.S. Green Building Council, along with the California, the Interfaith Power and Light, corporation, gave us the nod in getting this award. Faith was chosen out of a pool of dozens of applicants for the award. However, the key differentiator was the solar battery project, the storage project. With that, Faith has the ability to totally exit the PG&E grid and generate 100% energy from its solar panels. That makes Faith a potential energy distributor. I heard someone talk about the danger of this kind of power getting into the hands of consumers, talking about energy independence. However, at the same time, what it does is that it restores balance to the environment in which we live. We bask in the glory of energy independence because we now tap into clean energy from above and not dirty energy from below. Thank you very much, Ken.
Pastor Robinson, amen. Thank you, sir. Bask in the power from above should be our watchword. I'm going to turn now to some questions that we have coming in from the online community. Here's one from East Bay Clean Power Alliance. Laura, I don't know if you're the right person to answer this, but take a crack at it. What is the CPUC, what's the Public Utility Commission considering to do to incentivize more storage? I guess more batteries is primarily the way it's done now, to go along with rooftop solar. And this, of course, is part of the solar revolution now, right? It's changed everything.
That is absolutely right. Yeah, I think the vision for how we get to our 100% clean energy goal is we need a whole lot more rooftop solar, and we need a whole lot of solar batteries, right, that can save that solar power for later, for when the sun sets, so we can keep the power going. And a lot of the talk about the new proposal from the PUC is that we need to do this so that we can incentivize people to get batteries instead of having an incentive based on the extra energy you give to your neighbors. We should get rid of that incentive so that people instead are motivated to get a battery that you can use to save your energy and use it in the evening when the sun sets. The problem with that is that if you eliminate overnight the main driver of rooftop solar adoption, we're never going to get to that goal that we need to get to of 40 to 50 gigawatts of energy coming from rooftop solar. The reality is right now, batteries are still out of reach for most people. They're still a bit too expensive. And if we want to get to the place where it's actually doable for most people to be able to get a battery, to make that upfront investment, we need some kind of new initiative, some big program, kind of like what California did a few years ago when we did the Million Solar Roofs initiative. We need that same kind of initiative for 1 million solar batteries so that we can really get the economy of scale that we need to get batteries in homes and communities and churches and schools all across the state. But the way to get there is not to kneecap solar, kneecap the key incentive right away. And that's why we're all calling to make sure that the new proposal, the new net billing proposal, keep rooftop solar growing. There is some discussion about a new incentive for storage. It could be, there's various proposals underway at the Public Utilities Commission right now. But the reality is that those are not going to be enough if we are not also continuing to incentivize rooftop solar.
That's right. In order to have batteries make sense, you have to have those panels connected to them. And if people aren't putting the panels up anymore, that'll please the utilities, as we've heard from many of you, but it won't be the direction we need to go. And I had another question here. People seem to be confused, and I confess I'm confused too. If California wants, to get us off of fossil fuels, why go after any option like rooftop solar that would take us in the direction of getting off of fossil fuels? What is fundamentally going on here that people are so confused about? Any of my fellow panelists. So how do you make sense of that to regular people when all they hear often from Sacramento is let's clean up our grid, let's go with green energy everywhere, but then this proposal pops up. What's going on?
Well, I think we sort of hinted at that across all of the presentations. And there's a couple of things going on. But first, to answer the question, yes, this absolutely conflicts with our stated goals. We cannot get to these goals without a huge chunk of rooftop solar and this robust continued growth of that as well. But built in across agencies to the analysis that's going on to make these decisions are kind of sneaky assumptions that are being driven by the fossil fuel and big utility companies. You know, this whole concept of the cost shift is something that reframed the conversation, and then that reframes the analysis, and it works its way in. So we also see this with the Air Resources Board's their new scoping plan has some of these same issues where their proposals do not get us to our legislative goals. And I think that it's partly also just a massive failure of imagination. Like this grid of the future that these people here on this panel are talking about is exciting and dynamic and linked, and things like using the rolling batteries that you have in your cars, connect those to the grid, and your solar and your batteries and all this stuff creates a much more resilient system.
Thank you.
Just adding to that as well, I think the some groups are pushing the need for just more utility scale. The fact that we don't need rooftop solar because of this cost shift, argument that it hurts lower income folks. So we just use utility scale only. The problem with that, though, including the feasibility issues that we ran through, is also that we lose all of the local benefits. Local job creation and self-independence, and we get stuck into the centralized monopoly power, which I think is what also a lot of the companies want to hold on to.
That's right. The first rule of a monopoly is to save the monopoly, right? Preserve it. And I often hear conversations. We heard it during consideration of the proposal to extend Diablo Canyon. Lots of references to renewables, and often that seems to be a reference to utility scale renewables and not the kind of renewables we're talking about in communities, on rooftops, on schools, on churches like yours, Pastor Robinson. So it's really important to keep emphasizing the fact that we're talking about distributed energy that disrupts the monopoly model, gives them competition that they haven't had before. Which makes me think we should maybe go to this question that someone's posed. Where do we think Governor Newsom stands on this? He seems to have intervened in the first round in a way that gave pause to the Public Utility Commission, backed them off, certainly backed off the solar tax. But where do we think Governor Newsom is, and how does this fit with his agenda? If the Utility Commission goes forward, doesn't seem to fit very well.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I'll jumping in, and then anyone, my panelists my colleagues could jump in too if you want. But I just think that Governor Newsom has been a real climate champion, and I do think that we can thank him for the fact that this proposal got a bit better than the first proposal we saw in December. I think he listened when we said no solar tax, and now we have no solar tax. And I think he listened when we said honor existing agreements. And this proposal does that. It honors existing agreements. And I think when we said there shouldn't be a drastic cut to the credit, there needs to be something more gradual. I think that's why in the proposal we saw the somewhat tepid attempt at making a more graduated decline in the credit. The problem is there's still a drastic decline. And so there's one major piece that the governor needs to stand up for, to fix, if we're going to keep solar growing. And that's what we're calling on Governor Newsom to do next, is to get back involved and to help us save solar for the future by making sure there's not a drastic cut, like 75% cut to the core credit overnight, as we just saw.
Anyone else want to weigh in? on that
Well,
question of government nuisance?
I'll just say, I think my mic is unmuted. And just to tag on what Laura, says, I mean, the top side of this is, the political environment, right? But what happens, when the power at the bottom begins to realize what the real deal is, right? I mean, why does the church, in an oppressed community say, yeah, let's do solar? Why? Yeah, let's do battery storage, right? Because we're trying to tell people it's a matter of will, right? And if you can just unlock the ability to, look at, renewable energy in another way, other things begin to happen, right? All kinds of solutions begin to take place because people start to think now, right? And when they start to think, things begin to happen. How can renewable energy help homelessness? Are there companies out there that can take renewable plastic and condition it in such a way where you can like structure it like a Lego house and build like a 800, 900 square foot room with a bathroom and a kitchen, in a matter of 3 or 4 days, right? So I'm just a preacher, right? That's what they say, right? But it's about empowering people at the bottom. Once this thing begins to reach an adoption phase, and it's interesting. I'm sure I thought we were there, but apparently we're not. But adoption has not taken place with solar in California the way it should have, and especially across the country.
So we're there with the technology. We have all the potential. We're just we're running up against some resistance politically, and that's translating into this bad proposal. SB, I see you nodding your head. What's your perspective on this?
Well, I just think that we need a constant reminder to the governor who represents all of California to continue to do so. And like Laura was saying, he's been a champion for climate, but the only way, as far as with the plan and the roadmap to 2045, that, we need to, the environmental justice communities need to be included in that roadmap. And then how are we going to attain slashing greenhouse gas emissions by 85% when you're slashing, rooftop solar? And especially for on, larger, like we said, schools and churches, and you're not going to be able to do that. And then the new jobs that are supposed to be created, in the green economy, green new jobs, how is that going to happen if you're not going to make solar attainable and equitable? So I think that we need to take action and constantly remind the governor, how it is that he was reelected, and as a public servant who he's working for, including the commissioners themselves. And so I think that we just need to, going back to what the pastor was saying, ensuring that that we are made aware and that we continue to fight for climate justice with our environmental justice communities, and reminding them in those different components through written letters, through emails, through phone calls, and being present at the commissioners' meetings.
That makes all the sense in the world. Let's put public back in Public Utility Commission. Let's really make sure that it's more representative. To be honest, we have intervened in this proceeding. EWG has, and I have found it very, very challenging. And we're not new to this line of work, but we were new with the Public Utility Commission. All the rigmarole, all of the criteria you have to meet, it's very forbidding, I think, for the public to really participate. But I will say, thanks to the groups that are on the screen here and many more beyond, the people's voices were heard so far in this. And if they continue to be listened to, my feeling is that this proposal must change. Anyone else want to weigh in? We have someone asked a question again, just wanting, I think, maybe a little more detail. So what happened in other places when utility commissions bent to the will of the big utilities that seem to be, in many cases, their boss, and weakened rooftop solar programs in various ways? Laura, you had some slides in your presentation about it, but and others spoke to it too. Can we give a little recap in response to that question? Did things go really well? Did the cutbacks in the benefits for rooftop solar just have no effect? Everything was fine?
Well, I can just answer. I mean, about a year ago, we were wondering the same thing and wondering what actually happens when these important rooftop solar programs are cut. And we set out to examine that question, and we released a report that basically pulls together case studies from all across the country of what has actually happened to the rooftop solar market when the net metering, the extra solar credits are slashed. And what you would guess would happen, which is when you take away the incentive, demand drops. That's exactly what happened. Unfortunately, we found that in place time after time in Nevada, in Hawaii, in local municipal utility districts all across California, small districts where they did this, as well as in Arizona, time and again, we saw that when that credit was slashed, that demand for rooftop solar plummeted overnight. What was typical was demand dropped by about 50%. And in some places, like in Turlock and Modesto, in those smaller municipal utility districts, demand dropped by 80% overnight. And that's not something we want to have happen, right? As we talked about, we need rooftop solar not only to stay at the same pace, but actually to expand. We need it to grow at about, at a much, much faster rate. Some of the analysis is about 3 times the current rate in order to get to our clean energy goals. And so the last thing we should be doing is having any kind of action similar to what these states unfortunately did. Some of them actually had to had to put back in place the credit because they realized they weren't going to get any more rooftop solar unless they did that. And it was really unpopular when the solar growth just fell apart.
No, thank you for that. And, it just underscores the fact that this is an effort by utilities nationwide. Now, there's no place quite like California when it comes to the penetration of rooftop solar into the grid. There's no place that's created as many jobs, has as many rooftops, and probably has as many people in line to have solar installed on their roof and batteries besides when they can afford it. California is unique, and a lot of the effort that was put in by people on this call and other colleagues around the state had a lot to do with that. But now we see that the utilities are really starting to take this even more seriously. This is a threat, right? This is the first competition they've ever really known for not just generating electricity, but even distributing it, because it can be on my roof and it can be in a battery outside, and before you know it, this thing could get out of control. So that decline in jobs and installations, I know companies sometimes close down in areas where the public utility commissions listened to their utility bosses, and what happened was solar companies went out of business. So we don't want that either. We want those jobs all over California. We want that opportunity that you don't get from these centralized power plants. We're not going to employ people that live in parts of California that really need jobs if we're building all the plants for solar in the desert hundreds of miles away. We need these jobs locally. And Espy, you made that point among others. Really important. Anyone else want to weigh in on the question of what happens if this goes south, goes the way it's headed?
Well, I think the simple reality is it just makes rooftop solar not affordable for low-income folks. I think there isn't much more to say than that. Like this, yes, the solar tax is gone, but we should be getting rid of barriers to solar adoption in low-income communities, not putting up new ones.
Makes a lot of sense. So we're at about 2 minutes, I think, to go. 1 minute to go in this panel. Does anyone have any closing thoughts that they want to share? Otherwise, I think I will thank all of you for not just the panel today, but all you've done in some cases for many, many years to protect rooftop solar, make it what it is today in California. We cannot turn back the clock. We have lots of suggestions for actions people can take. We need to get the word to Governor Newsom, I think. I'll emphasize that. He needs to hear from people now that this somewhat improved proposals, not improved enough. We need to take it the full way and put on the books policies that really grow rooftop solar for all Californians and get out of this crazy argument that rooftop solar is hurting working class families in this state. It's ridiculous. We all know it, but that's what the utilities want. They want to crush rooftop solar. No deal.
No
all
way.
right? No way. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
We appreciate it. And let's let them hear our voices. All of you, thank you so much for such a great panel. Much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.